The third generation Toyota Land Cruiser Prado, aka the smaller Land Cruiser, aka the Land Cruiser 120, is a great car. It was available with numerous engines, but all you need to know is that the petrol engines are reliable and the diesel engines can have a couple of issues which can destroy them. So, let's check out these engines more closely. First of all, let's split the diesel engines, because believe it or not, this Toyota was available with three 3-liter 4-cylinder diesel engines. The rare 5LE has that much power, it lacks that much power that the earth starts to move backwards every time you push the accelerator. But it's at least very simple and very reliable. The other, slightly more common engine is the 1KZ. This one is not that powerful either, but it's reliable without unexpected issues. However, if you manage to overheat it, then you will end up with a cracked cylinder head. So make sure that the cooling system of the engine is working properly, check the vicious fan hub or fan clutch in other words, which can fail, check the radiator if it's not clogged, and it's better to not tow very heavy stuff or not push the car very hard in hot weather. And finally, there is the newer most common 1KD, which can have different power outputs. The power of these engines is acceptable, so the earth is gonna move the right direction with no problems. However, there are some problems with these engines which can even destroy them. The first issue or issues are related to the injectors. You have to know basically two things about them. The metallic washers can fail and the injectors themselves can be faulty. But first, the washers. These washers on the end of the injectors can and they will leak at some point. This is not good, since the combustion gases will get past this washer right to this rubber oil seal. The heat will destroy this seal, and since the engine oil is flowing in this area, it gets cooked.
This is just turning out to be a disaster, you know.
This cooking contaminates the engine oil with small carbon particles, which will get into the oil pan and they will clog the oil pickup strainer over time. This is not good, since the clogged oil pickup strainer will cause oil starvation, which will kill the engine if you don't catch it early. But luckily, you can check at least a small part of this oil strainer after you remove the oil drain plug. So you should definitely check the strainer right after buying and every oil change. But let's go back to the injector washers themselves for a brief moment, because there are two types of genuine washers. The genuine updated washers can usually last 200,000 kilometers without leaks. However, keep in mind that in cars made to 2007, Toyota used weaker washers which can easily leak much earlier than 200,000 kilometers. But the good thing is that plenty of these cars made to 2007 do have the better updated washers already fitted. On the other side, the bad thing is that there can be still cars with the weaker washers, and even the updated washers are not gonna last forever. For more information about this, visit my website. The next issue related to the injectors are the injectors themselves. To put it simply, they can fail and they will wear out over time. But the worst thing is that they can cause wrong combustion. And keep this in mind, because you will hear this later, since wrong combustion can contribute to a damaged piston, or in other words to an engine failure basically. But anyway, if you got one of these symptoms, then have the injectors at least tested or replace them. And actually, if your car has more than 200,000 kilometers, then it's a very good idea to replace the injectors preventively if you want them to be reliable, efficient and to perform as they should. But sadly, the injectors can fail even before 200,000 kilometers and even on the newer Land Cruiser 150 equipped with this engine. So keep this in mind, and for more information about the injectors, visit my website. And now we reached the scariest and the most expensive issue these engines can have: cracked pistons.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Yes, it is what it is. But first of all, you should know that there are basically three main ways a piston can fail in these engines. First, the pistons can melt, but this is a rare failure which can be caused by numerous things. Next, the side of the pistons can get damaged and seized basically. This can be also caused by a couple of things, but it can be easily the result of the already mentioned clogged oil pickup strainer too. And lastly, the pistons can crack, which is the most common, most interesting and also the scariest piston failure. So let's focus on this particular issue. Some say it's because of the faulty weak piston design, and someone is perfectly sure that it's caused by the faulty injectors only. But one thing is for sure. This issue affects cars made from 2006, which comply with the Euro 4 emission standard. And it also affects the newer 150 models equipped with these engines. Now, this is the official 4-page document from Toyota about this issue. But let's focus on this part and on this part. In this first part is the explanation what can happen. So a sudden strong knocking noise from the engine, black smoke from the exhaust, lack of power are the signs that your piston is damaged. So yes, the pistons can crack suddenly even without any prior symptoms. However, the piston can also crack very slightly, which means that the car is gonna drive fine for a longer time only with one prior symptom, a louder knocking from the engine. But obviously, sooner or later in this case, the engine is gonna stop running as well.
Give me a break!
And keep in mind that nobody knows when or if this issue is gonna happen. So it can happen anytime, since there are cases of cracked pistons before 200,000 kilometers, but also after 200,000 kilometers or just later, after 400,000 kilometers for example. But what does that mean if you actually end up with a cracked piston? Well, in this case usually not only the piston is gonna be damaged, but also the cylinder wall. All in all, be ready that the repair cost of this issue is usually somewhere between 5,000 euros and 11,000 euros. Listen, I'm not saying that the apocalypse is here and all of these cars are gonna end up with cracked pistons, like today or tomorrow. So there are plenty of even high mileage cars with still the original pistons which are not cracked. However, you should keep in mind that even if the chance that your piston cracks is not that huge, it can still happen, and that's why it's good to know the possible reasons behind this. According to this document, Toyota improved the injectors and they changed the piston shape to get rid of this problem. So the injectors causing wrong combustion and the pistons themselves should be the two main reasons. But I would lean more towards the bad piston design, since according to the parts catalog, in August 2006, Toyota updated the pistons. And strangely, from 2006, there is this possible issue. To make things even more interesting, this kind of a piston crack can sometimes occur in other diesel engines too. For example, here you can see a cracked piston from the infamous N47 BMW diesel engine. This piston is from a 3-liter TDI from VW Group, and this piston is from a 1.9-liter TDI, again from the VW Group. But I have to add that the reason why this piston cracked is because of faulty injectors only, and I also have to add that the piston crack on these other engines is not that well known as the piston crack on the 1KD Toyota engines. So yes, a faulty injector can cause a crack in the piston, but if the piston is weak or if it has bad design, then it can crack even without an injector failure. But let's not dive deeper into this. If you want a bit more information about this, then as usual visit my website. Because the most important thing is a list of things which you can do to minimize the chance of this issue. So how to minimize the possibility of cracked pistons? First of all, you have to eliminate the possibility of wrong combustion. To achieve this, you need to have the injectors in good condition and you have to use good quality fuel as well. Next, you have to protect the pistons from bigger stress. So, avoid engine performance upgrades. Don't tow very heavy stuff. Don't use the maximum power of the engine at all or use it only for a very short time. Regular, earlier oil changes are definitely a good idea. Keep the cooling system in a perfect condition and avoid high-speed long-duration drives. In other words, driving on the highway at 160 km per hour or more is not a good idea, especially in hot weather. Lastly, I have to highlight that doing all this is not gonna eliminate the possibility of piston crack, but it is gonna at least reduce the chance of it happening. And by the way, all these issues also affects the Toyota Hilux from this time, equipped with the 1KD engines of course. To end this video, let's quickly check out some other common issues of these cars unrelated to engines. Always check the frame for excessive rust, mainly on cars used on winter salty roads. The front brake caliper pistons can more often rust and seize up, again mostly in cars used on winter salty roads. The wheel bearings can get worn more often, mainly in the front, even before 200,000 kilometers. The optional air suspension on the rear axle is gonna sooner or later fail. The air struts are gonna leak and the air compressor is gonna break at some point. Occasionally there are oil leaks from the transfer case, AC gas leaks can occur, coolant leaks from the radiator can happen too, the turbo actuator can fail as well as the EGR on the 1KD engine, but that's usual stuff, and lastly the dashboard is gonna crack sooner or later if it's not cracked already. That would be it, I guess. If you have personal experience with this car or more information about it, then you can write it into comments.